Hello, welcome to Novara Live. My name's Bastani. I'm joined tonight by Harriet Williamson. Harriet, how are we?
Hi, Aaron. I'm really good. Glad to be here with you tonight.
Very happy to have you. I woke up rather tired this morning. I've had lots of caffeine, lots of energy, lots of very big stories. Coming up tonight, Israel's ground invasion of Gaza City intensifies. The individual at the heart of the Epping protests has been found guilty and sentenced to 12 months in prison. And thousands attend the funeral service of Charlie Kirk. Let us know what you think tonight, of course, using the hashtag Novara Live or using the super chat, the comments here on YouTube. And if you want to support our work, you know what to do. Go to novaramedia.com/support. Help us build a new media for different politics. Speaking of supporting our work and having a deeper kind of relationship with Novara beyond just YouTube, and of course, that's great. We also do events. We have something very special coming up soon. On Monday, October the 13th, Novara Media's next Downstream IRL, Gaza, the story of a genocide, will be at the Earth Theatre, in Hackney. That is a great venue. It's about 700 people. The tickets tend to sell out, so get involved. The event will include journalist and human rights activist Yara Aid, co-founder of We Are Not Numbers and Palestine Deep Dive host Ahmed Al-Naouk, and Al-Shabaka board president and expert in Palestinian and Israeli politics, Tarek Bakoni. I'll be hosting, and together we'll be discussing, among other things, the history of Palestinian resistance, the brutality of Israeli settler colonialism, and the brutal reality of Israeli prisons. These are really important people talking about, I think, the most important geopolitical event of the last decade. We'll also be joined by Kieran Andreo. He is, of course, currently aboard the Global Sumud Freedom Flotilla, the largest humanitarian flotilla ever organized to challenge the siege on Gaza. We're so proud of Kieran, and hopefully he'll be joining us. If you would like to join us, get involved, follow the link in the description below. You can get tickets and more information. Besides, hope to see you there, 13th of October. 6 new countries have recognized Palestine as a state. Among them, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Malta. French President Emmanuel Macron said this:
"The time has come, because the worst could still come to pass. The sacrifice of more civilians, the expulsion of the people of Gaza to Egypt, the annexation of the West Bank, the death of hostages detained by Hamas, or facts on the ground which could irreversibly change the situation there on the ground. This is the very reason that today, here in this chamber, we must pave the way for peace, because since July of last year, developments have accelerated, and at this point, we have reason to fear that the Abraham Accords, the Camp David Accords, could be called in question by Israel, and that peace would become impossible for a long time yet in the Middle East. It thus falls to us this historic responsibility. We must do everything within our power to preserve the very possibility of a two-state solution. Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. The time has come. This is why, true to the historic commitment of my country to the Middle East, to peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, this is why I declare that today France recognizes the state of Palestine.
Macron's speech was delivered at a summit co-hosted by France and Saudi Arabia yesterday on the fringe of the UN General Assembly, where world leaders are currently gathered in New York. In a joint statement, France and Saudi Arabia warned Israel against retaliating with any form of annexation, calling it a red line. Here's what Israel's permanent representative to the UN, Danny Danon, had to say about the question of retaliatory annexation.
The fury of your Prime Minister in terms of his response to the recognition of Palestine was clear. Do you rule out the annexation of the West Bank as a kind of backlash response?
First, I don't like the word annexation. I call it applying sovereignty. You know, when something belongs to you, you don't annex. And I think it's a decision that the government will have to discuss. I don't know if you do it as a counter effort. You know, in the past we applied sovereignty over the Golan Heights, over East Jerusalem, but that's a discussion for the government.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary. Just to be clear, the Palestinian Authority administers the West Bank. Danny Dan on there saying that it's ours. We wouldn't be annexing it. It would just be applying sovereignty. It's ours. As if the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas and the whole peace process involving Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin decades ago, the Oslo Accords, it all means nothing. And you know what? At least he's being honest. For the Israeli government, it does mean nothing. And notably absent from the UN General Assembly was Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, because the US State Department denied and revoked visas for members of the PLO and Palestinian Authority. At this point was hammered home by Brazil's President Lula da Silva, who said this earlier today.
The Palestinian people are at risk of disappearing. They will only survive with an independent state integrated to the international community. This is the solution defended by more than 150 UN members, reaffirmed yesterday here in this very plenary, but bared by a single veto. It is regrettable that President Mahmoud Abbas was prevented by the host country of occupying the Palestinian bench at this historical moment.
Lula didn't pull any punches, saying international humanitarian law and the myth of the West's ethical superiority are also buried under the rubble in Gaza. While we're on air tonight, American President Donald Trump is expected to deliver his plan for peace and post-war reconstruction to a group of Arab and Muslim leaders. Leaders and officials from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Indonesia, and Pakistan are set to participate, and the US is expected to call on these countries to send military forces to Gaza to enable the withdrawal of the IDF, as well as secure funding for a transition period and for rebuilding the destroyed enclave. However, The Guardian reports that UK government insiders are worried that Trump may grant official recognition to illegal settlements in the West Bank. Last week, the Israeli government signed off on the highly controversial E1 plan to allow a major expansion of settlements in the West Bank. It has been described by UN boss Antonio Guterres as a, quote, existential threat to a viable and contiguous Palestinian state. And despite key Western allies recognizing Palestinian statehood, including the UK, Canada, Australia, and Portugal, Palestinians in Gaza are still being displaced and killed as Israel's genocide continues. Since dawn, at least 28 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks across the Gaza Strip. Over the past 24 hours, Israeli air attacks on Gaza City have intensified, and ground forces have advanced in the south of the city. An Israeli airstrike hit the Al-Shawa residential building in the city centre, which shelters the Palestinian Medical Relief Society and was reportedly hosting more than 60 civilians seeking refuge. Palestinians were also targeted while filling up water in Gaza City's Daraj neighborhood. Gaza City is, of course, the most densely populated area in the enclave, home to at least 1 million people, and is also the site of an Israeli-made famine declared last month. Footage shared on Instagram shows an IDF tank in the ruins of the Nasser neighborhood of Gaza City, just 1 kilometer away from Al-Shifa Hospital. For those listening on the podcast, it shows the tank turret rotating and pointing towards the person filming before a gunshot is fired. Al-Shifa Hospital is the largest medical complex in Gaza City, and even with tanks advancing on it, doctors are refusing to abandon their patients. Here's an account of the situation from 2 volunteer doctors, both of which are Australian.
When we came north to Al-Shifa Hospital, it's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. We're doing this video because we know that we might die at any time, unfortunately. Our accommodation is in the old delivery room. As you can see, this is the hospital. It's all bombed, but the bombing is still happening. When we came from the middle to the north, we saw people are evacuating. Instead of 20 minutes on the road, it took us around 8 hours to reach. As soon as we reached, bombing after bombing with the Apache, F-35, F-16, rowboats, all sorts of weapons attacking us from everywhere around the hospital. The number of patients and the number of dead bodies arriving are ridiculous. So we're just basically people dead. We have more than 1,500 people still dead under the rubble in the hospital. Today they bombed just in front of the main entrance of the hospital. 2 days ago they did the same. The issue is we leave our accommodation is an outside walking distance. So we could be at any time at that side of the bomb as internationals. We're not even we've been told we'd be given an evacuation order. No even evacuation order as international people. So the situation here is just disastrous. I can't describe it. In the middle of the mass casualty today, there's no internet and no electricity. We're still out of Wi-Fi, so we can't communicate with our family, we can't put our picture up. And they're asking us to stay silent, otherwise our life will be in danger. What does that supposed to mean? We're just telling you what's happening. We're not allowed to show the photos because it's so traumatic and not allowed to post. But we're documenting this as part of what's happening for the future. Because someone needs to see this. Someone needs to help those poor people.
Isn't it extraordinary? Isn't it extraordinary? You've got healthcare workers there, Australians. They could be, I don't know if you're watching in the UK, they could be nurses in a local A&E where you live. Very easily. Change the accent, they could be locals. Isn't it extraordinary? As they're surrounded by bombed out buildings, they're saying, we can't document this. Our lives might be in danger. There's a reason why. Israel does not want the world to know the truth about what they're doing. The reason being, they're perpetrating a genocide. Now, since October 2023, Israeli forces have attacked 36 out of 36 hospitals in Gaza. 36 out of 36. Remember 2 years ago, of course, if you said they were attacking a hospital, well, that was an anti-Semitic trope. That was blood libel. Those were the days. Now it's all of them. Every single hospital has been hit by the IDF. And 3 of Gaza City's hospitals, the St. John Eye Hospital, the Al-Ratinsi Children's Hospital, and the Sheikh Hamad Hospital, are now completely out of service. Israel's major invasion of the city has been ongoing for at least 7 days. And on IDF orders, Gaza City residents have fled south with the belongings they can carry. A displaced mother, Amal Abu al-Baid, said this to Al Jazeera.
I walked from Gaza port to the central area. I have been walking since 5 a.m. and I have just arrived. I'm struggling with my injury. Now I have to find somewhere to live in Dir al-Balah so I don't lose the rest of my children.
But the situation is perhaps equally desperate in southern Gaza. In Khan Yunis, at least 3 children have starved to death today. Hundreds of thousands may be fleeing Gaza City, but hundreds of thousands more are too frail or injured to move. They remain as Israeli forces continue to advance, destroying civilian infrastructure and turning the Strip's biggest urban area to rubble. Harriet, what do you make of all of this?
Aaron, the thing that really sort of struck me while I was writing the story and the script today for this first segment is that the hell that is being unleashed on the Palestinian people in Gaza is not an accident. It's not unprecedented. It is part of Israeli military policy. It is a reflection of something called the Dyer Doctrine, which is the massive disproportionate use of force by the IDF and the deliberate targeting of civilian infrastructure. So things like schools, hospitals, people's homes, those high-rise buildings where people lived with their families that you can see turned to rubble. This is deliberate and it's directly from IDF military doctrine. And when we heard those 2 Australian doctors who are risking their lives to be there in Gaza, treating sick people, I mean, if you want to find the full clip, they talk very compellingly about the fact that there is absolutely no equipment for them to try and help people with. There's not even soap. There aren't even rubber, plastic gloves for them to use when they're doing things like surgery. They said that there are F-35s flying overhead, and those F-35s are manufactured with parts made in the UK that our government has repeatedly refused to stop selling on the global market, knowing that they end up in the hands of Israel. And this is why, we're talking at the moment about how the UK has finally recognised Palestinian sovereign statehood and what a wonderful thing that is. And yes, it is a good thing, and hopefully it will help to build international pressure. But the UK needs to do more than just that and really put its money where its mouth is. You cannot recognise the state of Palestine on one hand and then materially arm and provide diplomatic and political cover for the country that is committing a genocide on the Palestinian people on the other.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. The F-35 comment is really significant. I suppose I'll throw it back to you because you sound ambivalent almost, Harriet, about the value of recognizing a state of Palestine. I mean, the minute I saw Hussam Zamlot, the ambassador of Palestine in the UK, the envoy of Palestine in the UK, their representative, I think he will now be formally an ambassador, of course, with the recognition of the state of Palestine. The image of him holding, the national symbol, and the fact there will now be presumably a fully documented, quote unquote, legit embassy in this country, that does feel really meaningful and significant. Or do you just think it's purely symbolic and actually it shouldn't be overstated in terms of importance?
I don't think that it's meaningless. I think that it is important, and I think that myself, among lots of people who are listening tonight, will have thought that yesterday, when we saw the flag being raised outside in West London, what is now the official Palestinian embassy in this country, that was a really important moment. But the UK cannot shirk its responsibilities by simply recognising the state of Palestine. Palestine has to be a viable state, and the genocide and the UK's material support of it, including spy flights being flown over Gaza, must end. I mean, the US is now looking increasingly isolated on the global stage. There are 81% of UN member states who are now recognising Palestinian sovereignty. The US is looking pretty lonely out there. And I don't want to say to anyone in Palestine that it shouldn't feel meaningful and significant to you that there is this widespread Western recognition of the state now. But I think that the UK has to do much, much more. And there are certain politicians in this country, Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Yvette Cooper, whose conduct throughout this genocide will need to be answered to in the years to come in terms of aiding and abetting the genocidal state of Israel.
Yeah, and I think the point we sort of touched on briefly with regards to the expanding of settlements in the West Bank, illegal settlements, combined with the comments of Danny Danon about how it's just applying sovereignty, I think this is really, really significant. This is really, really significant. Those are illegal settlements, and you now have just an overt expression of annexationism in Israeli politics. It's ours. We're going to take it. It's going to be a greater Israel. And that has absolutely no kickback from our domestic political class here in the UK. I haven't seen a statement from Labour Friends of Israel about that. I haven't seen many right-wing journalists talk about how actually, the Israeli government is not just not serious about a two-state solution, literally wants to annex, in terms of landmass, what will be the majority part of a future Palestinian state. Here's the thing, and I've not said this because I don't do the show every day. I'm here on Tuesdays. I saw the response of people on the right to this news from Labour a few days ago now about recognising a state of Palestine, and they say this is awful, this is outrageous, it shouldn't be recognised. Many of those same people say that we should have a two-state solution. How can you have a two-state solution unless you recognise a state of Palestine? Clearly, it's a necessary prerequisite. It has to happen. Oh, well, if we recognise it now, then it's giving succor to Hamas. Well, when we recognised the state of Israel in the 1940s, was that giving succor to the Irgun and the Lehi and the Stern gang? Because there was a hell of a lot of Zionist terrorism prior to the recognition of the state of Palestine by this country, including, by the way, the killing of multiple British police officers and service personnel, the blowing up of the King David Hotel, the Sergeants' affair, where British sergeants weren't just hanged by Zionist terrorists, their bodies were booby-trapped. And then subsequent to all of that, the state of Israel is recognized by this government. So if you're a Zionist and you're saying that, oh my goodness, you should never award terrorism, what do you think the recognition of the state of Israel was? But in any case, I cannot get my head around this idea that we should have a two-state solution, but we can't recognize a state of Palestine. Because it just shows these people don't really mean it. Okay, so we shouldn't recognize the state of Palestine. That means we shouldn't have a two-state solution. Well, look, there are 5-6 million of these people. You don't think they should have a state. Where should they go? Ergo, you're saying they should be stateless people. They're being displaced at a record rate. Many Israeli politicians and high-profile figures are saying that they should come to Europe. And you basically agree. But at the same time, you're saying you don't want refugees. These guys on the right who are critical of this recognition, people in reform and whatnot, they're pro-refugee politicians, by which I mean they're pro-making more refugees. If you don't think that these millions of people should have a country, you can't whinge when they're displaced and go elsewhere. What else are they meant to do? Are they just all meant to die? Don't answer that, by the way, because it's basically, let's be honest, that's tacitly what people are saying. They shouldn't have a state. They can't stay where they are. They can't come to Europe. Well, we know what that means, right? You think they should all be exterminated. You're not going to say that because you sound insane, but that's the logical endpoint of your perspective on this. The individual at the heart of anti-refugee protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping has been found guilty of sexual assault. Hadush Kabatu has been jailed for a year for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and, on a separate occasion, a woman who was helping him with his CV. Kabatu's arrest led to a wave of demonstrations outside the Bell Hotel where he was staying as an asylum seeker from Ethiopia. His barrister, Molly Dias, today said this: Mr. Kabatu's firm wish is to be deported as soon as possible. The judge at Chelmsford Magistrates Court said it must have been, quote, a disgusting and sickening experience for one of the two victims, the 14-year-old girl, who was wearing a school uniform at the time of the offence. Every time I go out with my friends, I'm checking over my shoulder, she said in a statement. In addition to the two sexual assaults, Kabatu was found guilty of inciting one of the two individuals, that 14-year-old girl again, to engage in sexual activity, that time with a young male friend of hers. This was the day after the initial assault. Kabatu himself is 41 years old. Now, all of this happened just 8 days after he arrived in the UK by small boat, having travelled through Sudan, Libya, Italy, and France. Under the UK Borders Act 2007, a deportation order must be made when a foreign national has been convicted of an offence and received a custodial sentence of at least 12 months. The Home Office, since the sentencing, has said they will now seek to deport Mr. Kabatu. Harriet, I read the sentencing report. I really encourage people to read the sentencing report. It's only 14 pages. It's really, really extraordinary. The judge just says there is no hope of rehabilitation, in which case, given the kinds of offences we're talking about here, a 14-year-old girl being sexually assaulted, the next day, this girl being instructed to kiss her friend, the 14-year-old girl, along with a separate friend, I believe a female friend, invited to come into the hotel to have drinks, this 41-year-old man telling this girl he would like her to have his children, a separate witness saying they saw him say to this girl she should go back to Ethiopia with him and become his wife. I mean, like I say, a 41-year-old and a 14-year-old. This is despicable. It's disgusting. It's disgusting wherever the person comes from who's doing it. Doesn't matter if they're Ethiopian or white British or from Greenland. It doesn't matter. I think most sensible people would say it's absolutely unacceptable. Were the parents right to protest? This has been the thing that obviously has drawn national attention to it. I'm talking now in those opening days when this happened. Well, what's your view on that?
I think would be quite difficult as a parent to not feel like you'd have to go out in support of your daughter who'd suffered such a terrifying and traumatizing experience. And my heart really does go out to the 14-year-old girl at the centre of this. And I also want to say that Tommy Robinson and far-right agitators like him do not have a monopoly on our disgust and horror at sexual crimes against children. They really don't. Like, it's not their thing. They don't get to own this. We all feel it. And I think that rather than this being a problem of refugees or asylum seekers or people coming to this country and then committing crimes, this is a problem of men who go out of their way to abuse and manipulate children. And as you said, Aaron, they come from all walks of life. The majority of them in this country are white British. And yeah, if something like that happens to your child, of course, your first impulse is to go out and do something about it and show how outraged you are and stand up for your kid. Like, or to rally around your child. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. But unfortunately, protests outside of migrant hotels are very much co-opted by and the preserve of people whose agenda is to get rid of people from this country who are here because they've fled war or persecution. And we know that some of the figures who cast themselves as so-called citizen journalists, like Tommy Robinson does, outside of these asylum hotel protests, and they call for the protection of women and girls, at least one of them is a convicted paedophile himself, Anthony Styles. He was convicted in 2017. There's a massive amount of projection going on here from people who arrive outside these protests. They want to get footage for YouTube. They want to rile up crowds. They want people to feel a sense of disgust and hatred that is directed at people who commit crimes against children, yes, but it's also directing very strongly at people who are not what we would call white British. They are here in hotels to seek asylum. And I think that the conflation of those two things is incredibly dangerous. And also, when it does happen to be somebody who gets convicted, it feels like a complete win for people like Tommy Robinson. I bet he has cracked open the champagne and he is really celebrating the conviction of this man today. And that honestly, it makes me feel so sad. And I don't think that helps the young lass who was involved in it and was the victim of this crime at all. And I would also just like to just add that crimes against young people in this country, particularly girls wearing school uniform, they are far too common. And that is not because of refugees and asylum seekers. It's because of misogyny, and it's because of the way we adultify children and girls. I can remember walking home in my school uniform and getting followed and catcalled by adult men in the early 2000s. Like, this is not a new thing, and it is not just the preserve of refugees, asylum seekers, or migrants housed in hotels.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of that, but then I look at the judge's remarks, and he talks about the assessment of the offender. And he says this: you repeatedly apologized during the probation interview. You repeatedly cried and said you were ashamed. That's obviously to be welcomed. You also suggested that the United Kingdom was too strict. So I suppose somebody who doesn't agree with you there, Harriet, would say that, well, actually, yes, to some extent, of course, misogyny drives sexual assault. Yes. There is also a case that somebody from another country literally might not know the conventions, the rules, even the law about interaction between men and women of a certain age, cultural differences. I mean, those are very real. And I'm not suggesting that's the case with this man. I'm sure he did know the law. I'm sure he does know the conventions. But that's another layer to it. And I suppose put yourself in the shoes of the parents or the friends of the parents. Just say you live in that community and, you know, your next door neighbor, their daughter is that 14-year-old girl. If that, I'm being totally honest, if that was me and the offender hadn't been arrested and they were in a certain location, I would help them get the offender arrested. I would obviously help them. I think most people would. Right, left, center, doesn't matter. And I suspect, of course, there have been provocateurs, there have been political activists and quote-unquote citizen journalists who latch onto this 100%. They have an agenda which is anti-migration. You know, 100% agree with all of that. But I do think as well, because protests against asylum seekers are coded as right-wing, what's happened here is that immediately Stand Up to Racism, etc., have piled in and said, well, we're against you guys. And I think if you weren't political, if you're just a local person and you've gone to something like that because, like I say, your neighbor was that 14-year-old girl, you would think, what on earth is going on? Who are these people protesting in defense of somebody who at this point only allegedly had done this? We now know they did do this. But who are these people protesting in defense of this? And I think if you weren't plugged into the wider political debates, Harriet, you would think it's really bizarre. You would think there are people protesting for the right to harass schoolgirls in public. I mean, it would be quite hard for you to understand. And I kind of feel like the left is falling on the wrong side of that, frankly, in that conversation. And I think you're right. A good place to start with this is, look, again, we have lots of polarization in society right now. One thing people are not polarized around is sexual harassment, sexual assault of kids, right? I mean, there's lots of double standards with regards to offenders, I think, about their background, their gender, their race. Of course there is. People make all kinds of characterizations based on things. But I think, personally, if a white guy or a black guy or a brown guy did this, doesn't matter, their life will be hell. There's a reason why sex offenders, with regards to kids, when they go in prison, are put on a different wing. Their lives are hell, right? And a really good place to start is that, like you say, this is not just the property of, right-wing ultranationalists. Everybody cares about this stuff. Everybody wants their kids or kids in their community to be safe. But I feel like piling in to protest against the protesters doesn't really communicate that. And so you've made that point. I agree with it, but that's incongruous with the actions of counter-protesters. What would you say to that?
I would say that maybe Stand Up to Racism haven't had the best strategy here. And if there were people outside the Epping Hotel in Essex who were there because they were genuinely outraged that a child in their community had been subjected to a sexual crime, and then they were being called far-right and racist by a group of counter-protesters, I wouldn't be very happy. Wouldn't feel very good about that. But also, were those people outside of the Epping Hotel, were they there to call out the fact that one person within it had been accused of a sexual crime against a child? Or were they there outside shouting that all of those people who are awaiting a decision on their asylum applications are scum or shouldn't be here or need to go home? Because that's a different issue, isn't it? That's not about one girl being horrifically attacked in a traumatizing incident that might follow her for the rest of her life. I hope it doesn't. I hope she's able to get over it and heal in some way from it. And she feels that she got a sense of justice after the conviction today.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, look, my dad is Iranian. My dad got indefinite. It's now in the news, right? Reform are going to get rid of it. He got indefinite leave to remain. He's now a British citizen. I think my dad would be one of the first people to say, well, the guy, if you do that, you should be deported immediately. And I do think there's a bit of a tendency on the liberal left to say that, well, if you have that opinion, you're a white racist. Believe me, maybe I'm unrepresentative of this. Believe me, I grew up with Iranians and Turks and Kurds and Arabs. All of them would say that this is reprehensible. The man should not be here. And actually, he's making life immeasurably more difficult for people of color in the UK. That's what they would say. So I don't really get and you're not saying this, Harriet, but other people have said it. I don't really get the argument about going easy on this stuff. It's really, really important. It's really, really, really politically important. And I'm really worried that people are going to fall on the wrong side of this stuff. Really, really worried. Progressives are going to let people like Tommy Robinson own this issue, which is just completely unacceptable and not accurate of the reality, right? Like I said, like you said, Harriet, people, regardless of politics, care about keeping kids safe. Nearly 100,000 people filled an American football stadium in Glendale, Arizona on Sunday to mourn the death of conservative influencer and Donald Trump ally Charlie Kirk. Kirk was shot in the neck at Utah Valley University while he was conducting a campus tour on the 10th of September. He died approximately 2 hours later. A 22-year-old Utah resident, Tyler Robinson, has since been charged with aggravated murder over Kirk's assassination. The lavish memorial service had fireworks, a red carpet, Christian rock music, and plenty of prompts to buy merch from Kirk's conservative advocacy organisation, Turning Point USA. The 5-hour service blended the aesthetics of the WWE with the vibes of an evangelical megachurch. A White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, gave a speech. His speech, if you can call it that, was more a call to arms.
Erica stands on the shoulders of thousands of years of warriors, of women who raised up families, raised up city, raised up industry, raised up civilization, who pulled us out of the caves and the darkness into the light. The light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us. Because we stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble. And to those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity.
Complete psychopath, right? Complete psychopath. By the way, this is a memorial service for a Christian person. We'll see the comments of his wife, Erica Kirk, a little bit later on. And whatever you think of them, in my view, completely embodying the best parts of the gospel. Now, some people are going to think it's performative, whatever, but she says something which is completely different to what you just saw there. The idea that somebody's died, he was murdered, there's a memorial service, and you talk about how evil, not the person who's done it is, but just a broad group of people in terms of a wider political statement. The idea you would do that is just utterly disgusting. I think it's utterly disgusting. We're good and noble. They're evil. So, and look, we live in a secular society, in a secular age. I'm a Catholic. So unchristian. It is so unchristian to say that. We're the good, virtuous people. They're the evil, bad people. No, we're all sinners, mate. We are all sinners. The whole point of the gospel is we are all sinners. Repent, forgive, repent, forgive. Which, by the way, as we'll see in a moment, was a sentiment actually made by the wife of Charlie Kirk. But I can't think of a more different sentiment to that than what we just saw there. We are the ones that create, we're the good people, they're the bad people, they're the evil, they're the detritus. You look at the gospel, in the kingdom of heaven, the last shall be first. Think about the story of the return of the prodigal son, Jesus and Mary Magdalene. The sort of quote-unquote dregs of society being those who are infused with the most, moral value. With Jesus being at odds with the Pharisees, which was raised by Tucker Carlson. We're not going to go to that speech, basically a dig at Mossad. Bit weird. But the point was he was at odds with the quote-unquote official religious authorities of his time, right? People like Stephen Miller, people with power. He was against people with power. A guest of honor, President Donald Trump didn't hesitate to lift up humanity by making the event about his administration's policies. And no, not just with his bizarre autism announcement. He also said this.
Just like Charlie and Erica made Turning Point hot, we are looking at a country that has the chance to attain a level like never before. Tariffs are making us rich again, richer than anybody ever thought was possible. And the only one challenging them are people that hate our country or foreign countries that are paying a price, because they did the same thing to us for years. They took advantage of us, but we're making money. We're becoming richer and richer. And we're taking care of our people better and better when we do that. And we can take care of other countries better and better. But we're doing unbelievably well. The tariffs have really been a hold. The election was big, but the tariffs, because of the election, came in. And remember, other nations do that to us. And Charlie understood that. He saw the money. He saw what was coming into our country, and we can use that for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
This is a memorial service for a dude that was shot in the neck, and he's talking about tariffs and how the United States is getting richer. I know he's the president. I get it. You can take a bit of time off from campaigning. Perhaps the most interesting part of the memorial was this moment from Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica. Here's her speech.
That man, that young man, I forgive him. I forgive him because it was what Christ did and is what Charlie would do. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love. Love for our enemies and love for those who persecute us. The world needs Turning Point USA. It needs a group that will point young people away from the path of misery and sin.
Some people in the comments saying, Hollywood, give her an Oscar, blah, blah, blah. I have no idea what's going on in her head, right? Nor do you. Now, clearly it's theatrical, right? You've got 100,000 people. Of course it's theatrical. It's the memorial service of a very famous person involved in public life who's died. This is a rally. I get it. That doesn't mean she doesn't mean what she's saying. More importantly, when she says, I forgive because that's what it says in the gospel, I mean, she's right, okay? She's right. And also, this is the important part politically, it stands in complete contrast to what Stephen Miller was saying, right? I'm the goodie, you're the baddie, disagree with me, you're evil. That is not what any religion says, actually. Any sort of monotheistic religion says. We're all sinners. Anyway, you guessed it. President Trump appeared to disagree.
In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
This woman's husband died. She said, I forgive. And he's like, I'm sorry, Erica. I don't, it's quite funny. Harriet, there was a bit of a critical response online to what Erica Kirk said. What do you make of that?
Aaron, Erica Kirk's husband has just been killed. And the President of the United States has not only hijacked his memorial rally to talk about policies and how he's going to be able to cure autism and how great his tariffs are and how all the money is rolling into the US, he's also telling her that she should try and convince him not to be so hateful of his enemies. Honestly, it's bizarre. It's bizarre to watch. It was really weird watching those clips. It was weird writing the story. And it's also entirely in keeping with this sort of mega church aesthetic that goes on in the Christian right in the US. And the Christian right fully embraced Donald Trump. Like, they welcomed him with open arms. This is a man whose lifetime of actions is as far away from New Testament teachings as humanly possible. And yet the Christian right was like, that's our guy. And in mega churches in America, they tell you how to vote. They don't just say, these are our principles, this is, we might quite like this guy. No, they tell you who to cast your ballot for. and it better be for Donald Trump, and it better be for Republicans. Back to Erica, I mean, I don't want to speculate on how she feels or what's going on in her head. It did feel performative, I'm not going to lie. And this is somebody who, you know, their words don't always align with their actions. Erica Kirk is somebody who apparently makes her husband Charlie look quite moderate in his views, and he absolutely was not. She's got a net worth of about $2 million by herself. It will go up to $14 million once she has Charlie's, when we add on Charlie Kirk's estate. She's the one who said that the role of women is to be a wife and a mother, but not for her, because she has a number of degrees, including postgraduate ones. She's got a clothing company. She's got a real estate profits coming in. She has a podcast. Like, she has multiple jobs. She's also now the CEO of Kirk's Turning Point USA. Like, this is very much a case of do as I say, not as I do. So if, you know, she's saying, I forgive Charlie Kirk's shooter, she may forgive him. She may not. We can't say either way. But I find Erica Kirk quite disingenuous generally in the way that she presents herself. And I also feel like, thanks to excessive legacy media coverage of Kirk, we also know far too much about these people now in the UK than we did maybe a week or so ago. Even though, having said that, I do have to admit that they are becoming incredibly politically important, and his assassination is obviously a real key to what's happening in America right now and the way this country is constructed. Trump's words could not have been more divisive or more hateful at that memorial rally. He said it was the left that does violence. We don't know that the person who is accused and charged with the murder, with the aggravated murder of Charlie Kirk, was a leftist. He's actually more likely to have been some sort of extreme underground right-wing offshoot who thought that Charlie Kirk didn't go far enough. Like, that's perfectly possible. It's even likely. We do not know. And yet Trump has used this, and you heard the deputy White House secretary before him say that this is about the goodness of one group of people against the badness and evil of another. And we're so far from like the original tenets of Christianity here that we are on a different planet.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few points you've said, which is it important? Look, we're in the UK, we're not in the United States. Sadly, though, because of digital media, the two political spheres are kind of fusing, which I think is a shame, right? And people like Charlie Kirk, because you can watch YouTube just as easily in the UK as the United States, or TikTok just as easily as the United States, has become something of a figure, nowhere near like he is in the US, but something of a significant political figure here in Britain as well. Some of the numbers, reported numbers, around the live stream as well, are pretty incredible. Turning Point USA claims over 100 million views on the live stream. Fox News YouTube live stream had about 2.2 million live video views. I mean, it's wild. We could get a more detailed picture of it, but I think also Candace Owens was streaming it as well. You know, this was very much an internet-first phenomenon, and huge, huge numbers, in a way that it doesn't really happen anymore with regards to linear TV. Huge, huge numbers. And look, you've got a political rally, a memorial of a guy that has the president, you know, senior people in the White House like Stephen Miller, Musk is there, you know, the great and the good of the kind of MAGA sphere were there. And I do think it's a very significant political moment. There's one comment from John Moore, our great guy John Moore, over on YouTube, saying that Erica Kirk would be look out for her running as VP with JD Vance next time round, if Trump doesn't stand, of course. And I think that's a really good shout. I think that's a really, really, really good shout. This is now the Republican Party. I mean, that is extraordinary, right? You know, it was up for debate until last year even, that Planet Trump, the MAGA sphere, was really going to take control of the Republican movement, the Republican establishment. I mean, my goodness, they have. Where are the other guys, right? Where are the Bushes? Where's Mitt Romney, right? They're gone. This is now the Republican Party. They have their own media, their own personalities, their own infrastructure. Quite extraordinary. And you'd be very mistaken if you didn't think the right in this country wanted to create something play for play, which is exactly the same. Today, The Guardian is one of the most powerful media brands in the English-speaking world. In terms of monthly visitors online, it does better than the likes of The Times, hardly surprising. They have a paywall. But it's also much better than The Sun, Sky News, The Daily Mirror, and The Express too. Now, the paper was started in 1821. It was originally driven by a desire to take on the Tory press. You might not know this, but actually it was started in response to the infamous Peterloo Massacre of 1819. Back then, 17 people were killed, hundreds were injured, as tens of thousands of working class people from across Manchester and the surrounding areas came together to demand parliamentary reform and democracy. Since then, the Manchester Guardian, and in more recent decades, just the Guardian, has been associated with progressive causes and the left. That doesn't mean they get everything right. Look at the coverage of the Corbyn years, the fawning over Starmer, and the ridiculous fudges regarding Israel as it commits genocide. A lot of that is because The Guardian has always been, since its inception, a liberal and not a socialist publication. Left-wingers get really upset with it for being insufficiently left-wing. That's kind of the point. It isn't. And it certainly doesn't look at politics primarily through the perspective of class. That's something which has only been confirmed by a new development. The Guardian and Lingua Franca launched a new collection in support of independent journalism. Want to support fearless journalism? Want to defend progressive values in an era of rising political polarization? Here, buy a $380 cashmere jumper. It's not Primark, is it, folks? Now look, I like sustainable materials, and of course, fast fashion is bad, but I can get a cashmere jumper at Uniqlo for £80. In any case, and this is why we're talking about it, the politics of this is super, super interesting. The Guardian article highlighting the collaboration says this. The exclusive collection features 5 Guardian phrases on Lingua Franca's signature hand-stitched sweaters, including "Facts are sacred," "For fact's sake," inspired by the Guardian's over 200-year legacy as leader of the free press. I love the humility here. A portion of proceeds will benefit theguardian.org, a non-profit working to strengthen and amplify independent journalism. For fact's sake. For fact's sake. I'm wheezing. Anyway, this is the interesting bit. The Lingua Franca collaboration, launched in tandem with The Guardian's first major US brand campaign, The Whole Picture, showcases the diverse voices and verticals that power The Guardian's journalism. This includes US editor Betsy Reed, deputy editor of the race and equity desk Lauren N. Williams, investigative reporter George Joseph, political correspondent Adam Gabbett, lifestyle and wellness editor Estelle Tang, and features writer Elena Demopoulos. In alignment with The Guardian's values, the Lingua Franca collection is made with a focus on natural materials, sustainable production, and ethical labour. If your values are aligned with $380 cashmere jumpers, that's more than £300, can I humbly submit that your values aren't aligned with working people? We're values-led. What are the values? Really expensive clothes. Now, I looked at the website for this brand to see what else they make. Maybe it's a one-off. Maybe I'm being unfair. But no. Folks, we've reached peak lib. First, there's this. Kamala for the people. It's sold out just like her. $380 as well. Kamala for the people. What people? I guess the ones who can afford a $380 jumper. Maybe that's why she lost. Maybe that's why progressive America is in a bit of a pickle. Okay? You're the party of people that can afford $380 for a cashmere jumper with a slogan on it. Oh, why? Why can't we get working class voters? Why did Trump do better than any Republican in the 21st century in terms of winning working class people of color in major cities? There you go. Then there's this one. I dissent to the price tag. That's something to dissent with. And then there's this one. Who run the world? I'll tell you who runs the world if you have a class analysis, the people that run the world are the same people that can afford $380 for a jumper, for the most part. Who runs the world? So edgy. You do. You're probably in the top 1% of income earners in the United States. Finally, there's this. Don't agonize, organize. Organize who? The people making the $380 sweaters? I don't think so. I don't think there are trade union reps in the clothing industry that can afford that somehow. Are there trade union reps wearing quite luxury brands these days? I don't recall going to an RMT picket or a Unison picket of cleaning ladies and seeing Loro Piana and Brunello Cucinelli. Harriet, people might think I'm being harsh, but actually, I think this story is such a great snapshot of what's gone wrong with liberalism, because really important political acts have been reduced to slogans for cashmere jumpers. What's your view?
First of all, Aaron, I've got to say, these jumpers are so indescribably ugly, and I'd need to be paid quite a lot of money to wear one, never mind buying one. That's just a little bit of personal sartorial commentary from me over here. But the more serious point here is, of course, that capitalism co-ops radical political slogans. It co-ops them, it splashes them on a product, and then we spend our money on them, and it feels like we're kind of doing something. You are not doing something by buying one of these jumpers. You are feeding money back into, I would say, a centre-left, nominally legacy media paper that was pretty responsible for constantly plunging the knife into Jeremy Corbyn's leadership of the Labour Party and cheerleading the anti-Semitism smear narrative. That's what The Guardian was really good at. Like, the Labour Party had an actual socialist leader, and the Guardian, this nominally centre-left paper, took it as its sort of raison d'etre, its mission in life, to completely destroy his leadership. Its reporting on Gaza, while maybe slightly better than the BBC's, has been pretty lackluster and has prioritised Israeli Hasbara, its own propaganda, and Israeli comments on what's gone on, far beyond where it should have been, giving them priority in stories where a Russian justification for bombing or war crimes would probably never have even been added to the piece. These I wouldn't even buy a copy of The Guardian anymore, never mind spend, £300 on one of their cashmere jumpers. It really is giving the era of the "this is what a feminist looks like" t-shirts. I don't know if anyone remembers those, but they were only £45. But we had politicians like Theresa May and Nick Clegg being photographed in t-shirts that said "this is what a feminist looks like." This is Theresa May, architect of the hostile environment, and somebody who kept austerity rolling out, and Nick Clegg, who was the Lib Dem leader at the time when the Lib Dems were in coalition with the Tory government, and they created austerity, which harmed women as one of the most vulnerable groups in society who were most deeply damaged by the austerity agenda, and that's materially on women's life chances. T-shirts, bags, mugs, anything that's got like progressive stuff slapped all over it, meaningless, worthless, just in service of capitalism. Having said that, I would like to highlight how great Novara Media's merch is. I use this water bottle pretty much constantly. And the proceeds of it, not only is it ethically made, but the proceeds of it actually go back into our journalism. And we're an incredibly small team doing actually really big work. And when we're reporting on articles, which is a large part of my job at Novara Media, we are challenging legacy media narratives. We're trying to get to the heart of issues and do actual truth-telling rather than just repeating Israeli propaganda or a government line.
I mean, I was laughing there because Harriet's gone from slagging off slogans on T-shirts to saying that buy our slogans on T-shirts. But just to be clear, Novara's merch is much more fairly priced. I buy it, and it's very, very ethical. The organic cotton, fully unionized supply chains, cooperatively owned printers. I think zero carbon distribution, like very, 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 very ethical stuff. I mean, we all want to buy ethical clothing. The point is, you don't, a $380 cashmere jumper. The problem in our society right now is that about 5% of the population has too much money. That's the big problem. It's not the only problem. I don't subscribe to that. If we just raise tax on the rich, everything will be fine. It's not. No, I don't quite agree with that. I think we have lots of problems on the supply side where we could learn from, guess who? China, but whatever. One of the major problems is that 5% of the population they have too much money. And by the way, if you can afford $380 for a cashmere jumper, you're one of those people, right? And just because you write on it, don't agonize, organize, it doesn't mean you're not part of the problem. Now, I'm sure many of the people who are willing to buy those jumpers want to pay more taxes or whatever. That's fine. That's fine. But look, this really grates me, guys. Maybe we'll take a few comments. There's been a cost of living crisis, right? People are really struggling. If you're the foremost center-left publication in the English-speaking world, and you're saying that a product which costs $380 aligns with your values, I think that says something about your values and how you're out of step with the people who need your politics the most. It's kind of how I feel. I don't know about you. I was talking about this to my wife the other day. She earns good money. I earn less good money, but whatever. It's two incomes. And we don't go out. We don't buy nice things, really. We don't. Like birthday present or whatever. Yeah, of course. But we don't buy nice things. We have one holiday a year, which fantastic. Very grateful for that. But we don't spend a ton of money. And I was just saying to her, success is being able to have a kid, maybe have another one, just getting through the week. That's success to us. The idea that we would spend 300 quid on a jumper is wild. And we're doing okay. So I don't see how you can think your political project is going to help working people and that you have them foremost in your mind when you're spending that kind of money on a jumper. Conditions determine consciousness. If you're in that set of circumstances, I question how much use your politics is going to be for working class Brits. Harriet, I know you want to come back.
I want to come back, Aaron, because I've slagged off branded merch as it's not helping anybody, it's not radical, it's not anything. But I think that you're right, that the real problem with these Guardian cashmere sweaters is that they're an offensive price point, and we are in a cost of living crisis. All my money gets funneled back to my landlord, who doesn't actually live in this country, but he owns 8 properties in London and collects extortionate, eye-watering rents on them. How did anyone at the Guardian think this was appropriate? Who are they aiming these products at? Not normal people going to work doing an ordinary job. Who can afford a £300 jumper? It's utterly insane. How is this? This is a paper that's going to hold Keir Starmer's feet to the fire over the fact that he hasn't materially improved conditions for people in Britain. He's done absolutely, pretty much as far as I can see, zero to do that. His Plan B phase is in tatters already to sell jumpers.
What was that, Harriet? Sorry.
I just said, but the Guardian's priority, it seems to be selling some expensive jumpers.
Yeah, well, the next time they write an editorial on a strike or something, right? The Guardian position is we cannot support the strikes by nurses. They want a 4% pay rise. Okay, put those two together. They can't have a 4% pay rise, but we want to sell you this $380 jumper. Maybe those two things are connected. Just a thought. Thank you, Harriet, for joining me this evening.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And to all the commenters saying that they really want Northern and non-London IRL downstream events from Novara, be assured that we are working on it. And I really, really want that too as a non-London born journalist. It's very close to my heart, and I'm keen that we have one of those in the near future.
There's a comment here. James Brown, Aaron, be careful. I think you said you'd pay £80 for a jumper. You're out of touch. First of all, I don't own any jumpers that cost £80. So I can't be out of touch. That's how much a cashmere jumper is from Uniqlo. Okay, you don't need to spend 300 quid on one. There's one for 80. Cashmere is cashmere. Maybe I'm wrong. I buy my jumpers from M&S, 35, 40 pounds. I think that's middle class. A £40 jumper. I thought that was middle class. What do I know? I'm such a beginner. Everyone, it's been great. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. For now, you've been watching Novara Media. Good night.